welcome to SalesTV. We're in the very fortunate position this morning that Andy will not be able to join us because he's stuck in traffic. I think he may be along shortly, but it's lovely to see you all, and I hope that you're having a good day. And today we're going to be chatting about a couple of things. We're going to be chatting about is sales, do we think, embraced enough as what it is, which is the engine that drives your business and indeed the global economy. And also, sales has got a bit of a bad rep in many circles. And largely because of those machismo sales movies, like Glengarry Glen Ross and The Boiler Room and all of those things.
Wolf of Wall Street, would you put that in the same?
Oh yeah, although there was the thing about the Wolf of Wall. Look at that.
There we go.
You're looking lovely, Andy.
And you're right, Adam. For a moment there, I think we did look like the cast of Dynasty.
Yeah, it is a bit Dynasty-like that, isn't it? Which one of us is going to play JR today?
Well, I don't want to get shot.
Yeah. Yeah, so that whole kind of the machismo of sales, and I think what's really interesting is that you said about Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah, at least that had a bit of humour in it, didn't it? Let's be honest, Glengarry Glen Ross didn't have a whole heap of humour in. It was a very bad.
Well, unless you're in sales, of course, and then it's very funny.
Well, it's very funny if you are the Al Pacino, because sales has its ebbs and flows, doesn't it? Sometimes you're lucky, your personality gels very nicely with the accounts that you're talking to. You've got the right product at the right time and people are buying, and you are on the ascendancy. You are the Al Pacino. But equally, sometimes you're out of luck, and then you're not the Al Pacino. You're the Jack Lemmon, aren't you? And yeah, very, very unfortunate for people that are in that situation.
Yeah.
But morning, Andy.
Morning, how you doing?
Yeah, good.
How
was your journey down?
It was all right until the close of motorway. Yeah, it's like I am literally going to have to go off and get a cup of tea and rub the caffeine into my eyes in a minute. So
yeah. So you made a really interesting comment a couple of weeks ago, Andy, where you said about how your daughter, I think you said, well, sales is just you go and sell stuff and it's not really that important. And you said, oh, hold on a moment. Sales is the engine that drives imports, exports, businesses, revenue, the global economy. So why don't people embrace sales for the crucial thing that it is in so many businesses? Sales is often seen as something you go into whilst you're working out what you're going to do with your life, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny. I was in Ireland over the weekend, and I was talking to staying with some friends over in Bulky, which was great. And this guy's like a well-known international banker, and he was just saying that actually the issue is people don't understand what sales is. And I thought, that is so right, because I was relaying what Tash had said about, it's a bit boring and all this stuff. And I think partly without getting on a downer on it is we call it so many other things, but actually we lose sight of the equation, isn't it? Which is someone's buying something, someone's actually probably selling. And there's a number of different possibilities as to how that happens now. That can be online, completely digital. It can be, face-to-face. It can be over the telephone. And it can be across a whole plethora of different types of motions, from simple stuff that would be, repeat business, like buying your groceries online, you put it in a cart, your favourites go, right the way through to buying a holiday as an individual or a car or even a house. And then if you think about the business perspectives of that, the reality of it is you've got the same kind of motions, isn't it? If you're a large organisation, you may well do a framework agreement and then buy everything online, from laptops right the way through to, Heinz baked beans if you Tesco's. And I think we've just lost sight of it. I don't think it's anything bad. I think we just don't call it what it is. possibly because of mis-selling scandals, and I was thinking about that on the way down, actually, which is, if it's done badly, it's called mis-selling. If it's done well, it's called something else.
Mm.
And I chuckle with the mismarketing. So if you notice, like, you go past, and it doesn't happen in Ireland. Like, again, I just checked, and it was like, if you go past an ATM, it's got free money.
Yeah.
Never free, because it always comes out your account. So that's got to be misleading. But no one ever goes, hang on, you can't put free money on an ATM. And have you ever noticed, there's never just a comfortable flat or apartment. They're always advertised as high-end luxury apartments and, splendid living.
Deceptively spacious.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right. You're right. It is deceptive.
It's like, you got to be kidding me. So I think we call it so many different things that we, I don't know. Someone's just said, what's the best way to learn best practices around enterprise sales? Do you have a suggested reading materials, courses, templates, YouTube channels, or mentors?
Watch this show every week.
Yeah, all of the above.
Yeah, I think there's also the fact that so I was watching this video the other day. Someone I've started following recently called B2B Jade. And she kind of she was looking at sales from the marketer's perspective, and she was asking questions. Well, why do sales get paid the big bucks? Why do sales get the commission? Why do sales drive the big fancy cars? And I think depending on which angle you're looking at this from, there's different reasons why there's stigma attached to sales. And then she posed a question. Well, why don't we share the commission? If we're all as a business working towards winning customers, why isn't the commission shared? What's the view on salespeople earning commission, and why should asking this question and thinking, is this the right question to ask? Why should salespeople earn commission?
Well, I think that's a pretty obvious question, actually. Salespeople have traditionally had a very tough life. So if you want to sit in marketing or finance or product development or whatever, yeah, you have deadlines and you have objectives and you have KPIs, but it tends to be quite an inward-looking thing. I'm working with members of my team. We're working as a team to go to improve elements of what we do or how we do it or how we promote ourselves. When you're in sales, your job is to proactively knock on doors, either physically or virtually. And the problem is that the nature of people's propensity to buy something, like 2% of people are in market to buy at any one time, which means that for every one person that says yes, they'd like to have a conversation because they might be interested in buying your product, 49 people are going to say no. So if you think about what it would take to motivate you in a work environment to keep doing something where 98% of the time you're told no, you would have to be well rewarded for that.
Yeah.
Hi, can I just have 2 minutes of your time to... No, I'm too busy. Hi, I was wondering if you were interested. I'm not. Hi, we've got the fantastic thing that can sort you. No, you don't. You don't know anything about me. And actually, the problem is we all know it from the buyer's perspective. I mean, we all know it from the seller's perspective as well, but we all know it from the buyer's perspective that when you are busy and you get interrupted by a salesperson who's trying to sell you something, whether or not they're doing it by telephone or by email or knocking on your door, whatever it may be, your primary objective is to shut them up and get them out of your face as quickly as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that for the salesperson to keep knocking on doors is a big ask. And the only way you can motivate them is by having a big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Now,
not the only way, but yeah.
Well, a major way.
Yeah.
I think that part of the issue is as well that because the nature of businesses. Every business is after growth. There are very few businesses that say, we are selling 105, we've got orders of 105% of the products that we can possibly manufacture. Therefore, we don't need to do anything other than do client relationship management and keep the clients bubbling along. Every organization is after growth. And because of that, salespeople are put under ever more pressure to knock on more doors to get more yeses from the 2%. So it's a very high, we've all worked in high pressure sales environments, and it's difficult. We've touched on before why salespeople have mental health issues, why they have low self-esteem, why they're struggling with their life in sales, and so many of them are leaving as a consequence of that. Because it's tough.
And which is why I think celebrating wins in sales is incredibly important, but it feels like that idea of celebrating a win is becoming less and less unless it's a big win. And I wonder if that's because surrounding teams don't like to see sales celebrating. Mm-hmm. I wonder if it's because organizations have put so much pressure on salespeople that they no longer feel like they should celebrate because they've still got so much more to deliver the organization.
Yeah. So here's a comment from LinkedIn user. Any suggested reading materials, courses, templates, frameworks you choose me? There's a very real risk if we answer that we turn this into a sales pitch. But I think that the thing that every person needs to embrace, particularly those people in sales, where you get a very fast feedback loop of what works and what doesn't, is that if you're not achieving your objectives, then given that you have some competency in the area, then probably, very good point, Ian, then probably the things that you're doing aren't working. So the best thing that a salesperson, or indeed anyone in business, can do is to be brave enough to try new things that they haven't tried before. We are forever talking to organizations that seem to have this seminal problem at the moment, which is that they have no pipeline and they have no way of generating more pipeline. The last 3 companies that I've spoken to have all said the salespeople can all close. They're all really good at selling. They're good at the politics and navigating the process of doing the sale. What they haven't been able to do is have enough conversations with people. And if you're phoning people and emailing people and you're getting no response from those things, the answer is not to do more of those things because you're not getting any response. The answer is to do something else. And this requires a degree of lateral thinking, doesn't it? And it requires a degree of bravery to say, the thing that I'm comfortable doing, packaging up those emails and sending them off to an ever-growing number of people that are going to receive my weekly, monthly, bi-weekly newsletter or whatever it may be, I'm not getting any responses. So therefore, I should try something else. Now, what you try is down to you. But clearly, if you're doing something that isn't working, you need to do something else.
But is it down to you? When I say you, and you say you, I'm assuming it's the salesperson you're talking about, the individual. I don't think it is down to them most of the time, because the strategy that the business operates is entirely focused on searching and qualifying the 3 to 5% of businesses, people that are in market for their product, and they're not given the freedom to be able and the time to be able to spend building relationships with the other 95% or so that are more receptive.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a degree of truth in that. I think in the majority of companies that are sales focused, if the scrutiny for what you're doing is only applied to you if you're not achieving your number. If you are achieving your number, you're allowed to do pretty much whatever you want because you're contributing to the organization in the way that you're supposed to. And I think that everybody that is in a repetitive role and sales is a repetitive role, doing that qualification bit, learns fairly quickly that if I send you an email saying, "Hi Alex, here's a fantastic tool that we've got that you might be interested in," and then I send you another email saying, "Hi Alex," and then I send you another, and my email bounces back the third time because you've blocked me. And for so much of this, we need to change our thinking, don't we? From this is not about qualifying you in or out. This is qualifying you now or later. If I've got a good product that you are going to need at some point, the question isn't, are you going to buy my product? The question is, when are you going to buy my product? So I need to keep you in loop until you are ready to buy it.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I do like Christopher's comment though. Do different things rather than doing things differently.
Absolutely.
But then so I agree with that, and I think salespeople that perform, above average are doing that. They're doing those things within the guardrails that have been set. But I do think what we're talking about is that those guardrails need to be moved completely today.
Absolutely. I mean, this is great, isn't it? And so one of your sons, and we've used him as a case study a number of times for this.
I'm sure
One of your sons was asking himself the question, "Am I cut out for sales?" Because of those guardrails, forcing him to do something that wasn't delivering either revenue and conversations and opportunities or the interaction that he craved. And here, managers are desperate for the need for recognition, interaction, and fun. And I think that's a really important thing. So then he changes what it is he's doing, and he's having loads of conversations with new people. And he goes, "Oh my God, this is the best job in the world because I'm talking to all of these new people each week." 40% of his time was spent having first conversations with people because he was not focusing on, is this person my ICP? He was focusing on, is this person somebody that I can have a conversation with that might be able to provide value to growing my network within that target organization or their contacts? Perfect.
And that isn't being done enough.
I think we're missing a really big point here, which is it's thinking about stuff. And salespeople, to your point, they fit into either I will do exactly, to your point, Alex, what I'm told to do in this box, and I won't even try and step outside of this box at all. Or I'm in a motion where I don't need to step outside the box because it's literally finding some software as a service or some software type thing that we will sell. And that motion is actually relatively new and very different. But to me, I think what salespeople have stopped doing is just thinking. And I think what we're all talking about here is X, Y, and Z. No, salespeople have a right to think for themselves and challenge and grow their own businesses and manage their own businesses. They have and it's the only role within most organizations where you have a patch or a set of customers, you have a goal, you have some, and it's down to you how you get there. And
it should be down to you.
But it is down to you most of the time.
Well,
however, we keep saying it's the company's fault. Very much, most of the time, it isn't the company's fault. I sold 25 years ago. Barclays didn't stop me from doing what I wanted to do, and GE didn't stop me, and Dell didn't stop me.
No, but I think right. So the last two comments we've got here. So Yayan's comment about 75 to 80% of salespeople will not hit their target this year. So if you're in the 20 to 25% that is going to hit your target, you're going to be the Andy Huff, aren't you? You're going to be allowed to sell whatever way you like because but that's right, isn't it?
But again,
make $1 million a year.
That number's slightly inflated, but the reality of it is and Yayan is exactly right to a degree, but that actually is over-quoting, which is a different thing. Which is the company not getting away. This is a company putting an insurance policy in because 75%, just using that number there, 75% of globals do not sit around and go, we're going to miss our number.
No, absolutely right. But what happens is that for the 25%, they take care of themselves. They make the revenue for the business. They're the people that are, in quote, successful. For the overquoted people, the people that are in the 75% that don't make their number, that gives me as the company the leverage to do whatever I want. Andy, the reason you're not making your number is because you're not making enough calls. So here, Conrad's
I
the
don't
problem
think
is that you've got a sales manager that doesn't understand what's going on. Solution to increasing sales is to increase the call rate. So calls are not working. Make more of them, and then you'll be lucky. And this is the challenge, isn't it? The challenge is that if you're not one of the people that's making their number, you come under increasing scrutiny. And well, Andy, the reason that you're not making your number is because you're not following my process.
No, again, I think we need to be very careful about how we look at some of this stuff, because you need process. Otherwise, you have anarchy. If you cannot have a situation where you've got 200 salespeople and each one of them wants to do their own thing. So you've got to look at all of this in a balance. And I know we're being like provocateurs here, but the organization needs to grow, period. We as shareholders, we as pension holders want our investments in our pension to grow. So we can't all sit here and go, yeah, these guys bad, because we want our pension. We're all equally to blame about wanting repetitive growth and continuous growth. Where it becomes a little bit unstuck is, and it's become, I think, increasingly difficult, is we don't recognize salespeople for being what they can be, which is intelligent human beings who can be professional. And actually, when an organization says, from a cultural viewpoint, that's what we're going to do, and we're going to stop doing silly things like putting insurance policies in, like overquoting, and we're going to start understanding how we motivate people in their intrinsic value sets as opposed to extrinsically. And we're going to figure out that managers need to be managers, not super salespeople who take the responsibility away from a salespeople. It will get better. But us shouting at the rain, we just need to break it down. Organizational culture, management capability, freedom and acknowledgement of capability and professionalism of the salespeople. It's not really more complex than that.
Isn't the issue with overquoting, though, that I set you a quota that you got 80% of, yeah? So you have been selling into that territory for a year. You've taken you a year to get traction, and you've started to get some traction, and you've achieved 80% of an unrealistic quota, and that's what you've achieved. You've tried to sell as much as you possibly can, but you've only been able to achieve 85%. That's you as the salesman's perspective on this. My perspective as the manager is, you were set a target, you only achieved 80% of it. It's simply because you're lazy, Andy. You're spending too much time going out to dinner with your mates and buying Porsches, because we all know salespeople drive Porsches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crank up your target by 125%, because then if you achieve 80% of it, because you're still going to be lazy next year, if you achieve 80% of it, you're going to make the number that I actually need you to make. And it's this, isn't it? It's this thinking that is part of driving this hamster wheel of people doing these repetitive tasks.
But this is where, so this is where I think that we sort of have this conundrum. So I agree with what you're saying, Andy, that salespeople are intelligent human beings that are not really having the freedom, the space to think for themselves and grow their own business. Yet there are complex businesses that are wanting more from the individual, but not necessarily giving them the support that they need for them to perform at a higher level than they did the year before. And actually, at the end of the year, if they were to say, if the manager was to say, well, let's sit down and look at your pipeline. What does the forecast look like? We need you to do this. How can I help you achieve that? What are the things that we need to focus on? I don't think that's being done enough. Or if it is being done, it's more paying lip service than actually delivering on the outcomes.
I think we need to step back about it and just start to segment it all, because there are different motions now. And Ben Dorks is on, and he's one of my personal heroes. So good morning, Ben. I think he's just nailed the point there, which is 20% are well above target, 60% hit 70 odd or near as, and then 20% don't make it. But it's the type of company and the selling motion, one type doesn't fit all. We need to acknowledge this on SalesTV. There is a completely brand new, and Ben is a spirited CEO of one of those types of organizations, which didn't exist 10 years ago. Might have done, but certainly didn't exist 15 years ago, which is something as a service and software. And, that we have to acknowledge that there's a different motion there. And then there is a different motion now in other organizations if you are dealing with enterprise. So somebody that said, what are the hints and tips of being great at an enterprise role? Well, start talking about it. Well, define what is it? Is it new business in enterprise? Is it account management in enterprise? Is it complex enterprise? Is it FMCG? There's a lot in the world of sales now that you have to start peeling back the layers on to really understand what makes people good. And we can't say that somebody like Jordan and Jensen, they live in a different motion now where they have to be able to demo stuff and take stuff through. Yeah, I talked to somebody the other day, quite rightly, who was doing flow meters, and they went, we used to 10, 15 years ago, take out a flow meter and demonstrate it to our customers. But now we just send them a video because somebody's got this really cool packed video. So again, two completely different industries, one where the capability of the rep is to demo, one where that was replaced and that no longer happens. So we can't say the skills of both those people are comparable. They have to behave in different ways. And that's where we've got to take this as SalesTV to say, let's think about the industry. Let's think about what they're trying to do and figure out basically what the motion is, and then actually figure out what are the similarities. And someone said it on here, it's curiosity, it's being able to plan, it's being able to think outside the box, it's being able to build relationships, it's being able to have a multi-year plan, because somebody just said, wherever the metric is, what happens if you're on a 3-year refresh cycle?
Yeah. Or a 1 year. Yeah.
I mean, you've been in it. I mean, you were in Oracle. I was in EMC and Dell. If you sold 70 million to somebody 1 year, it's highly unlikely they're buying 70 million again the next year. You have to wait for the refresh cycle. Now, it's responsible for that salesperson to then manage upwards and go, guys, I'm a fairly senior person. I'm managing 70 million pounds worth of your revenue slide. So I'm probably a key or strategic or global account manager. Just to make you aware, I'm not going to do that next year. I might sell 10, but you want me to make sure.
Anything. I might not sell anything because they've bought everything that's buyable. Yeah. So Christopher's comment here. Some are. What often happens is that revenue is set from the top down. Here's what we need to achieve as an organization. So we'll divide it out amongst the different departments and the different territories. That's what you have to do. Very little did I ever see that as being a dialogue between the two. Alex, how big is your patch? How much can you sell into this region, to your target accounts? And you say, I can sell 20 million. And I say, well, actually, I need you to do 80. And you say, well, that isn't going to happen because simply isn't the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, the pressure's on sales leadership because, when someone's hired into, sales director, VP of sales, CSO, they're expected to know the answers. So how long, who does that come down to, right? Does that come down to the leader themselves to manage up within the organization, set the right expectation that, look, for many years, I've been this successful in the past. This is what's worked, but now the things have changed. We need time to assess what's changed and then come up with a sales motion that addresses those changes. How long should that take?
I don't know. Let's ask Ben Dorks to come on next week and talk about that because he's gone from salesperson to sales leader to CEO. So, Ben,
Ask
I
him.
know you're listening. Can you come on next week and we'll ask that question of you directly as to how have you managed those complexities? Because we can get Ben on. We could get Phil Jones from Brother, who are salespeople through and through, who've made that jump to actually become CEOs and the ultimate people. And I actually think that they probably understand how to answer that question better than CEOs that are finance people. So Ben said yes, he'll come on next week.
Good man. But I think now here's the thing. You've mentioned Ben Dorks a few times, and
I get £5 every time I mention his name.
I figured that there would be some sort of relationship.
I'm up to about £35 so far.
Andy, once a salesman, always a salesman, mate. But you said that Ben was a very successful salesman, and he's now a very successful leader of an organization. Now, one would deduce from that the organization is a successful organization. So it has salespeople that are empowered to do the right thing. It has pipeline. It has revenue. It has revenue growth. Alex, you talk to 20 companies a week. How many of them are in that situation? That's the exception rather than the rule, in my experience. Almost every organization that I talk to says we have no pipeline. We have no way of generating more pipeline. And the interesting thing is that the people that are at the coalface, the people that are expected to sell, and the sales leadership within an organization, the fact that they haven't got the tools, they haven't got the capability, they haven't got the backing that they need to be able to do something to try to generate, that doesn't affect what the expectation of them is to sell stuff.
See, we'll get on to that. Again, not picking a fight with you, I don't believe that, because again, if people haven't got enough pipeline, they'd all miss goal as a company. So what they're saying is they might not be comfortable with the pipeline they've got. They might not trust the validity of the pipeline, but pure mathematics would say they've got to have enough pipeline. Otherwise, we'd have probably 80% of the global organizations around the planet going, we're going to miss target. And there'd be profit warnings all over the place, and CEOs would all be being fired right, left, and centre. So I think we need to dig under this and go ask and get these people on and say, what is the real issue around here? Because it can't be lack of pipeline. Because if it was lack of pipeline, people wouldn't be doing it. And if you then extrapolate out, 52% of deals end up in no deal, back to Jolt effect. But somebody else said, where do these numbers come from? LinkedIn, HubSpot are very good at doing research around these kind of areas, and it's credible. Therefore, the pipeline must be okay, because 50% of it ends up going nowhere. So you've got to have 2-3x your number to be able to even get to your number.
Well, 5x quite often. But then it comes down to quality of pipeline, which does align with what Adam is saying, which Completely. Is the relationships aren't there, the trust isn't there. So you're involved in the process, but you never really have a chance of winning.
And I think that's interesting, down to somebody who talked about hints and tips about enterprise. It's that asking firstly, understanding your key stakeholders now, understanding their different personality types, and then asking the tough questions. I regularly sit in on sales calls to observe them, and no one asks the budget question. They're too scared of it. Nobody asks what the process is to actually go through that budget application and that sign off. What's the ROI that needs to be demonstrated? What are all these things? And that's complexity. Back to your point, you've got to understand now 9 to 10 different personas. You've got to understand basically how their different agendas are influencing their decision processes with each other and their decision process on your service or your product. And you've got to manage that. So the psychology in sales now is where it's never been before. Yeah. It's a true science. And that's why I'm delighted that the UK has adopted, under the apprenticeship program, a BSc in this, because it recognises it is a science as much as people will go, it's an art form.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Not enough qualifying out.
Yeah.
I've had a conversation with someone and they didn't tell me to go away. Therefore, that's going to go into pipeline as a hot lead. And actually, what you don't need is 5 times coverage. What you need is confidence in the stuff in your pipeline.
Yeah.
So,
but to Chris's point, that's where AI is going to have a massive impact on forecasting.
Yeah.
Because what it's going to do, and there is some machine learning now that actually looks at some of this stuff, but AI will start to go, no. Given all the characteristics of that transaction and that deal, it's not going to happen for another 4 months. So why are you as a sales rep forecasting it to close next week?
But I think also AI will enable you to see that you, Andy, are very confident in your forecast, and the things that you're forecasting come in roughly when you say they're going to. Alex, on the other hand, is incredibly optimistic in his forecast, and he says that this is going to close this week. And in fact, I know it's not going to close, or historically, it's not closed for 6 months. Therefore, I can wait. That AI will be able to wait that as well, won't it? And he says he's got £1 million worth of pipeline that's going to close this week. He's probably right. Alex has got £10 million worth of pipeline that's going to close this week. Well, in fact, that's not. That's going to be £1 million that's going to close in 3 months, because that's what history has shown us has happened.
And I worry if that's the direction, VC money is going in, because that's the next big thing.
Yeah.
And you have walled gardens, social media walled gardens, where a lot of the selling activity, relationship building activity is done nowadays. It's going to miss a massive component. And when I say walled garden, so like LinkedIn or other social media platforms that don't allow the intelligence to be automatically fed into an AI tool. Therefore, that AI tool that does that forecasting calculation is potentially flawed.
Yeah, but I think on an interesting issue there. I don't think there are that many walled gardens anymore.
Well, no, LinkedIn is. The data can't be passed out of LinkedIn easily, and if it is, LinkedIn normally severs that connection. However, it's worth bearing in mind that LinkedIn is owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft is one of the largest CRM systems that there is, and clearly there will be some connections going on here which benefit
and Microsoft
Dynamics.
Put how many billions into ChatGPT? So basically, absolutely, it won't be a walled garden, but it will be your solution. Microsoft's solution will be better than Salesforce's, will be better than Oracle.
And you can't blame them. They spent $26 billion buying LinkedIn, and so far they've sat on it and seen how the land lies and thought about this in a very strategic way. So good on them.
Well, if you see what happened with Nokia, I mean, they effectively killed it because the money to pump in once we bought it was just ludicrous. So, but this is the way that, it's going to flow forward, though, isn't it? So, and I like Ben's comment here, where there are multiple different, sales professionals with hundreds of jobs, and we've got to start thinking about that and actually making the connections that actually allow people to progress. So if you start in this SDR job and then you go to here, then what skills are transferable to this completely different industry? It was a relatively simple, similar selling motion, and actually, therefore, help people understand it is a profession. It is not a career. It's not a vocation, and that's the challenge that every big brand and every small company needs to join together and go. If we are going to sustainably grow, we need to attract smart, talented people and we need to be inclusive, we need to be diverse, and we need to really think about these things. So 100%. We need to bring older people in. Older people bringing a completely different work ethic and dynamic, and it's a positive thing, role modeling for call centers and younger organizations. Bringing people back who have had children, bringing them back into the workplace. Disabled people, if you think about all the stuff that EY has done in their Manchester centre, bring back neurodiverse, because people have got different skills.
Yeah.
And I think Ben's comment is, again, I'm up to £55 now, is basically spot on.
I think Andy, you missed one. I've got my notes here. It's £60 now.
Do you get a slice of that now, Adam?
Yeah. Commission.
I think this is a nice segue for me to just, and I'm looking at all the comments, and may I be so bold as to say every single comment is from a man, not a woman. And England women are playing China today in the Women's World Cup, the first Women's World Cup that's ever been co-hosted by two countries, Australia and New Zealand. And I think we're just in time to catch New Zealand. It's their evening, but I just wanted to wish the Lionesses good luck in their match against China today.
The interesting thing about women's football is that, and I'm sure that you've noticed this,
It's played by women.
They play really hard, don't they? So, one catches another one with their studs and there's blood everywhere, and the one that's bleeding gets up and dusts herself down and then gets on with the game. In the men's football, I run too close to you and my wind touches you as I run past and you're rolling on the floor screaming. So it's the men that need to man up, isn't it? And take a leaf out of the women's book in terms of how to play the sport.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, but the disparity in pay is just ridiculous still, though, isn't it? So, so somebody gets paid, I think the highest transfer fee was equal to Cristiano Ronaldo's weekly wage bill.
Yeah.
If it's quality, it's quality. And I'm a big fan of Ian Wright's viewpoint of we've got to invest in this. We've got to get investors to put money into it and show people that, this is a great thing to do. And great that they got the government to put a bunch of money in, at the grassroots level. But that's got to keep flowing through.
That's a good point, actually, because I've had, discussions within the Abbott household about the pay disparity. And Jensen's made a good point before about the purse for the World Cup. And women get 20% of the purse and men get a much smaller percentage as they try and bridge that gap, but still they're paid a lot less in base terms, and that's because there isn't enough money in the sport in the women's football. And so we need to 100%, Andy, I think we need to do more to bring more money into this sport.
But so much of that is visibility, isn't it? So you see that there's going to be a women's football match on and you go, oh, I can't be bothered with that. Or you think there's a men's football match and you think, wow, I'm going to watch that. If women's football got equal airtime to men's football, you'd realise that actually it's every bit as exciting a game. And for an English person, it's actually a much better game because you've got much more chance of watching a win rather than a loss, haven't you?
Yeah, I think these systemic issues, though, isn't there, in terms of women's football? I think don't you have to be like a member of every club to even stand a chance of going away to watch your team? So it's things like I'm pretty sure that's a problem. But I do think if you look at it today, 12 o'clock, you're going to be able to watch the Lionesses. Tonight, you'll be able to watch England netball play Fiji. And actually, I will not be watching lunchtime because we've got some work to do. But tonight, I'll be watching women's netball, and I thoroughly enjoy it. And actually, bizarrely, netball's got a diversity problem the other way. So it's not in the Olympics because not enough men play it. Bizarrely, my daughter
isn't that basketball?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but my daughter said, I said to her, why is because she's a really good netball player. She's just going to represent Pulse in the under-15, so daddy proud moment. But she just went to one Olympics. She turned around and she went, yeah, netball's not in the Olympics because it's not defined as sport, but walking is. Go figure. It was just like, yeah, good point. I don't know how I argue with that one.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, judo is not a sport; it's a game.
Is it?
Yeah. So interestingly, you have a game of judo, but that's an Olympic sport.
Because men and women play it.
Yeah. But equally, chess is not an Olympic sport.
But it's a game.
Which is a game. But it should be because it qualifies in the same way that judo does.
When does AI make chess redundant?
Who knows? Who knows? I think though that the point about diversity is a really important one. I think that, as you said, Andy, when you bring in different groups into an environment, everybody benefits from that. Not just, and I think so often, diversity for people that are old and outdated in their viewpoints they see diversity as being piecework. Or we'll get some people that aren't like me into the group, and that will be good for them. And actually, it's not that it's good for them; it's that it's good for you when they come into the group.
It's good for the conversation. It's good for the challenge.
Absolutely.
It's good for the thinking. So people with different views to you, if you respect them, give you an opportunity to consider, reflect, and have potentially different pathways. And we did some work as the APS, as it was at the time before we rebranded, with EY, and they proved through some analysis that inclusive, because you have to be inclusive before you can be diverse.
Yeah.
Inclusive and diverse organizations in terms of sales were 7% more profitable.
I can absolutely believe that. Absolutely believe that. And, you know, I we were talking about, I can't remember who I was talking to, but we were talking about exactly this. And there's that famous picture, isn't there, of the equal rights for women ministry in Saudi Arabia, which is all men.
Yeah.
And the irony of that. And it's like when somebody talks to me about bigotry or systemic racism or misogyny, and I can sympathize, but I can't empathize. You know, I'm a white, middle class, able-bodied, straight, middle-aged man. So any failings that happen to me absolutely are laid at my doorstep because I've been dealt a complete set of aces in terms of my opportunity to promote myself and move forward. And I think that one of the things that's really interesting is that when you have a sales team that has a proportion of women in it, actually 52% of the global population are women. And it's like, well, why are we not embracing that in sales? Why are we not embracing the fact that, you know, other ethnicities and religions and able-bodied versus disabilities and all of the different facets are often just completely ignored, aren't they?
Well, Alan's just absolutely nailed it in one comment. We tread on eggshells as opposed to really grasping the situation. And why should middle-aged, you know, heterosexual men like you be involved in the conversation? Well, until you care and champion it, it doesn't count.
Absolutely.
And that's often missed in terms of the diversity conversations, isn't it? We'll have a diversity and inclusivity, and we'll have women in sales. You know, being very, I don't understand why we have women in sales awards. Surely that's equally as bigoted and sexist as having men in sales. Shouldn't we be working to say no?
Yeah, well,
successful awards.
We should, but it's like we don't need to have straight pride. We don't need to have the white business awards. We don't need to have the men's business awards. And the reason we don't is that everything is straight pride. Every day is straight pride. Every day is the men's business awards. My daughter pointed out to me, and she's 21, nearly 22, and she's a feminist, as most young women are. And she said women's success in the boards of Fortune 500 companies has taken an enormous leap forward, in that now there are more women CEOs than there are men called John. And she sees that as a big watershed that has been.
Wow.
You know, and that just, I mean, she says that obviously very tongue in cheek, but that absolutely is the problem, isn't it? That it's all men. It's all men that look just like us.
It's bias. It's a lot of it is unconscious, but it's bias.
Mm-hmm.
And until we get over biases, and actually we'll talk about it tonight, is one big thing. So going back to Ben, £75, talking about lots of different customers and different types of people. The one thing that we need to explore that professional sales or salespeople haven't got a handle on yet, and it's the next big tsunami coming, is the consumer bias of every single buyer. And until we start to understand that people behave like this in their personal lives, therefore actually cannot turn that off in their professional lives, we are going to struggle, because it requires openness, it requires a level of authenticity, it requires a proactive communication. It also requires that basically you have got some level of credibility and license. You don't book a holiday in a hotel that hasn't got a 5-star review. You don't buy something that hasn't got a 5-star review. You don't go and see a dentist that hasn't got all the qualifications. You don't get your car done now unless all of those things have passed us by as a vocation. It's time we get all of the people on this call in our networks to grab hold of it and go, things will be different going forward. Then lots of young people will go, I want to be part of that. That sounds pretty cool.
And on that note, that inspirational note, brilliant. Thank you to everyone in the audience. Richard, Alan, Mike, Paul, Jensen, Christopher, Ben, 75, 80 pounds now for you. Chris, Conrad, Ahmed, Rad, Chris, different Chris, Yayan, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining this and being part of the conversation. We hope to see you next week or tonight when we do the American version of this show, where we are fortunate enough to have a guest as well. So until then, see you all very soon, I hope. Goodbye.